talk a little bit about hormonal imbalances and how they are an indicator that we are out of sync with the rhythms of Mother Nature. So hear me out for a second. So this is based on, I have a session I just pulled together that's happening tomorrow morning in my network where we're talking about melatonin. So as I'm doing my research and getting all of this ready, it's remarkable to me how much melatonin impacts so many different functions in the body. So melatonin, let me take a step back. So melatonin is a hormone that your body makes. I think most people would associate melatonin with sleep, right? Like we talk about melatonin as a supplement, and that's something that you would take if you're struggling with sleep. And for anybody who's taken melatonin, it makes for really weird sleeps, and it kind of messes with things, and is, when you take a look at it, is not actually having the same impact as if you were to naturally support the making of melatonin in a body. Doesn't have the same impact, doesn't have the same effect. Yeah, it can actually, in some bodies, help you to get to sleep. Hi, Eliza. But is not necessarily the way that it's not working in the same way that your natural making of melatonin would be. So just to give you a little bit of context there, right? So melatonin is that hormone that we make in this little organ called the pineal gland or the pineal gland. I call it the pineal gland because it's shaped like a pine cone, and I just want to remember that I'm part evergreen. Pineal gland. So it's shaped like a pine cone. It's in the middle of your head, like smack dab, like right in the center of your head. And pineal gland is the size of a grain of rice, and it is this organ that makes melatonin. So melatonin is that hormone that is produced in the pineal gland as the outside light starts to fade. So you're so sweet. So the natural hit of light, of sunlight on your eyeballs without your glasses on, that dimming of light naturally enhances the making of melatonin in the body by your pineal gland, because you have they're called photoreceptor cells. It's a type of cell in your eyes that register the quality and quantity of light that's happening in your environment. So whatever type of light that is, you have photoreceptor cells in your eyes. It's the only, you have a little bit in your skin, but the majority of them are on your eyes, and they're in your eyes. And they've even found that people who have visual impairment or blindness, actually still photoreceptor cells will work in many of those bodies. So they're still registering the light, even though you can't see the light. And they have this connection to your pineal gland. These photoreceptor cells send the information to your pineal gland and to your hypothalamus, actually, that says, hey, it's sun setting time. I'm registering that the sun is setting, so it's time to start gearing things up for sleep in the body and start gearing things down of being awake. And that natural progression of light naturally is received by the cells in your eyes based on exposure to this natural light. And that is what triggers the making of melatonin. Interesting. Okay, that's nice, Luca. What does this have to do with hormonal imbalances as a lack of connection to Mother Nature and out of the cycles? Okay, so pineal gland responds to those lights from the cues you get from the lights in your environment, right? From that sun setting, from the lights dimming after dinner, from the sort of down, you're supposed to gear down as the evening goes on. That's a natural progression in the body. It's what we have naturally done over millennia as humans. You tended to have candlelight, and that was it that you could work by. And then 100 years ago, then the light came. And so now we were able to actually make incandescent bulbs, which mimicked a lot of the same similar types of light. Now we live in 2023 where our screens and our light fixtures, which now we're not allowed to have incandescent lights. We're supposed to have the LED lights, which is better for the environment, and all of these different ideas behind it. But those lights and the lights from our screen, like this guy, like my computer, like the new HD TV things, like the type of light that comes off of these screens mimics the middle of the day light. So just to point this out, I'm just trying to give you the information to take you to why this is about hormonal imbalances and why this is what's driving why this we are not in sync with the natural lights is one of those contributing factors. So the light that you get from your screens, from your non-incandescent bulbs anymore, they all mimic the middle of the day on June 20th around the equator. So imagine it's January 7th and it's 11 p.m. and you're trying to get to bed, but your screen is on and you're watching things like, I am one of those people who does very similar things. Like, I'm not saying we all need to be perfect, but just to give you a little bit piece of information, the light that's coming from your phone or from your screen or tablet or whatever is telling your body through your eyes that, hey, it's the middle of the night. Or it's the middle of the day on June 20th in Costa Rica. But you happen to be in January 7th in North America and it's 11 p.m. So now your body's confused and thinks you're in the middle of the day. Well, what are those what do you do in the middle of the day? Like, without knowing what some of the science is, what do you do in the middle of the day? Is the middle of the day a time for napping? No. What do you do in the middle of the day? Oh, that's like probably your most productive time. That's probably a really great time to go for a workout. It's probably a really great time to plug away at that project that's due at work or at school. It's probably the middle of the day where you are most like the brain is firing and you're able to get things done. You're able to put things in place and organize your life. Do you know that capacity is governed by your brain being able to read the cues of where you are in time and space? Those abilities to get shit done in the middle of the day is because your cortisol is peaking. Why is your cortisol peaking? It's peaking because your body is telling you, oh, it's the middle of the day, it's June 20th, and I am living my best life, and so we're going to get things done, and here comes cortisol. So our screens now entrain us to a different time and space. So we're living in a different era. We're living in a different way, and we will evolve. Like, you can evolve, and you can wait for 8 generations to evolve to figure out how to live within these different light cues now. But it's going to explain why we're so out of sync with our natural hormonal rhythms. Here's why. Melatonin is the hormone that you will make when your body reads that the sun is setting and that the photoreceptor cells in your eyes are registering that the sun is setting. What happens when that goes on is that, oh, it's time to make melatonin. That's the phone call that gets made. Hi, it's the photoreceptor cells in your eyeballs. I'm calling the pituitary and the pineal gland. I see that the sun is setting. Could you start making melatonin, please? Goodbye. Hang up. Awesome. That's what's supposed to happen. What happens as melatonin starts to rise, melatonin opposes cortisol, and the natural dimming of light actually supports the increase in melatonin and the dimming of cortisol. When you start to introduce the fake lights, you're bringing cortisol back up. Cortisol is a natural suppressant to melatonin, so as cortisol rises, now you can't fall asleep. Yeah, that's fun. Do you love that? I know. So, further to this, melatonin, so melatonin's made as the light dims. Do you know that melatonin receptors are alive on your ovaries and they are around in your testes? They are, you have receptor sites on a lot of different hormonal organs in the body, on your thyroid, actually, on your adrenals, on your kidneys, on your liver, you have the capacity. So receptor site just means melatonin can land in there and make something happen. Melatonin is the hormone, and that's what circulates in the body. Hormones are telephone calls to make things happen in the body. Melatonin comes and docks in melatonin receptor sites, and you have these receptor sites on your ovaries and your testes. Or if you have both, I suppose you would get, if you're hermaphrodite, you would get, of course, signals on both the ovaries and the testes. Okay. Why is that important, Luca? Well, if you have a receptor site on those organs, it means melatonin has an ability to impact what's happening in that organ. So when they study things to see, they're noticing that melatonin, which is a part of your sleep-wake cycle, part of your circadian rhythm, governs fertility, governs your menstrual cycle and governs the production of testosterone and the dimming of making testosterone based on where your body perceives you are in time and space, because of the light cues that you're getting in your eyeballs from the outside world, because of that circadian rhythm. So your circadian rhythm, which is governed by this melatonin production, cortisol. So you're supposed to melatonin as the light dims, cortisol as the light comes back, melatonin. This is your 24-hour clock. And you reset it every day based on those light cues that you're going to get from not a lot of light, a lot of light, not a lot of light, a lot of light. And up until 80 years ago, not a lot of light meant it's night. A lot of light meant it's day. Your body produces different things in the day than it does during the night. And in the night, that melatonin lands on your ovaries and stimulates follicular hormone or luteinizing hormone and your follicular stimulating hormone, LH and FSH. Those are two hormones that govern your menstrual cycle. They are two hormones that also govern your fertility. So melatonin has the capacity to go, shh, take a breather, or, oh, it's time to ramp up, based on what those hormones are doing, based on where you are in your cycle. So in order for your menstrual cycle, your fertility, and all of those things to regulate, if you have a female body, you need melatonin to regulate and tell your body where you are in time and space. And if your body is confused as to where you are in time and space, it will have a hard time regulating the regular daily and monthly cycles of your hormones, your cycle, and your fertility. Eve, also doing that on the testes, you have melatonin receptor sites on your testes, which means melatonin can dampen testosterone as it's getting higher up. If you cannot get to deep sleep, testosterone gets to have a little bit of a hayride and starts to rise. Same thing with estrogen. There is melatonin naturally turns off the enzymes that make estrogen. So in deep sleep, I like to think of melatonin as the whack-a-mole hormone that goes, estrogen, you're getting a little bit too dominant there. Back down, baby. Oh, testosterone, you keep it down over there. And it sort of does a gentle whack-a-mole with all of your hormones, so you can think of it that way. But it only does it if it's the natural occurring melatonin. There's studies done to see, okay, what about melatonin supplementation? Melatonin supplementation is a synthetic form of melatonin. It must have the same impacts. So I was just reading studies, and it's hilarious to me. They're like, well, hang on, melatonin may not have that impact on testosterone. We need more studies to figure this out, because that study told us melatonin had a positive impact on reducing excess testosterone in rats. But in this study where we did it with supplementation, it didn't seem to have an impact on testosterone. But they're not differentiating that the first study was done with natural levels of melatonin they were measuring as natural in the blood versus the supplementation and its impact. So they think the supplement is the same as the natural thing, and it's not. It is not. So now the science is saying, well, hang on, melatonin may not actually have an impact on testosterone. Wait a second, just a second. Can you take a step back and say the truth? Supplementation of melatonin, a manufactured version of melatonin, does not seem to have the same impact as a natural progression of melatonin in the body. Could you please make that clear first things first? So you need to dive and you need to look with a critical eye to some of this information that comes out and go, hang on a second, wait. Are you differentiating between the natural and the sort of made in a lab versions? So that's the first thing to know, which doesn't take away from the fact that natural enhancing of the natural production of melatonin seems to have a positive impact on a testosterone that's riding too high. Whack-a-mole. Get back down there. Estrogen, same thing. Whack, whack, whack. Get back down there. You're not in charge. And when you do this, you make a natural progression of that sleep and wake cycle, cortisol, melatonin. And so when melatonin rises, cortisol reduces. And now this allows for the making of progesterone. Because the building blocks of progesterone are the same building blocks as cortisol, and your body will prioritize making cortisol because your body needs to get you out of harm's way before it does anything else. Cortisol is the life-preserving and life-saving mechanism of the body that helps you better prioritize getting out of harm's way. So, hormonal imbalances, if we take, I like to go like, looking at the things really closely, and then taking a step back and going, can we look at the whole thing like a bigger picture? So here's the bigger picture piece, which is, I'm tying into my thesis statement here. I feel like I just wrote an essay. Hormonal imbalances are due to we are out of sync with the natural rhythms of the world. Anything to do with hormonal balances is an indicator that we are out of sync with the natural world. Why? We need to reinsert ourselves into the natural world with the body out in the actual natural world. And yeah, there are other red lights that you can do in the winter that really helps with some of that. You know what else does? Getting outside and having a fire. Fire is the natural red light. Isn't that so funny that we need these Kala lights and all of these light therapies? And yeah, they show that they work. Do you know what they're mimicking? They're mimicking a fire. 100 years ago, what did you do to keep warm in the winter if you lived on the prairies where I live? You had a fire. Turns out those red lights from the fire are the same as those red lights of that little machine that you sit at and you do your makeup and you eat breakfast at so that you can get the red light in the morning. First of all, the fires were lit, sure, in the early morning, yeah, but they were also lit at night. And that helped on so many levels to reset some of that hormonal balance. So the type of light you get from fire is helping reset some of those hormonal balances because we learned to read those cues because that's just how we did it. Anything you do consistently, the body is brilliantly manufactured to get into tandem with what's happening and on a consistent basis over many generations. Just like the introduction of those non-incandescent lights and the sort of blue light that we get from our screens and from our new light fixtures, I think in 8 generations we'll be fine. I think the 8 generations leading up to it, we're sure going to shift. And oh my God, that shift is going to be painful. And how does that shift show up? It shows up in infertility. It shows up in lack of sleep. It shows up in estrogen dominance. It shows up in testosterone issues. It shows up in an inability to fall asleep, stay asleep, get that deep sleep. And when you can't get that deep sleep, now you cannot balance blood sugars tomorrow. Now you cannot balance hormones for tomorrow. And now you cannot clear inflammation and the debris of cleanup from inflammation so that now you're ramping up inflammation even more, which is now going to drive autoimmune conditions. So inflammation and chronic disease, it is why right now we are seeing a massive increase in autoimmune dysfunction, in chronic disease, in thyroid and metabolic health, in blood sugar balance, and all of these things. And are we actually getting good sleep? The supplementation doesn't work in the same way. So we think we're getting good sleep, but are you actually getting natural sleep? There was a study, I saw a video the other day that Orsha Magyar put together. It was amazing. She found this new study released in January of this year that said sleep medications deplete certain neurotransmitters in the nervous system and set you up for Alzheimer's. You have an 82% increase in the development of Alzheimer's if you do sleep medication for a long time. No one's telling you that when you take that sleep med, do they? Oh, fart! So, here's how you do it. It's really easy and it's so unsexy and it's not going to make anybody any money. So you will not hear about it anywhere until we build the new world that is not going to be built on capitalism. So I'm going to help build that world as much as I can. So if you're tuning in and you like this, just put a like with it. And not because I need to be more in the algorithm, but because everyone needs to know we're not alone. We're building the new world. It's okay. It's going to be fine. So how we do this is we tie into the ancestral piece and how did people do it before? Oh, they lived in the natural world. How do you balance estrogen? How do you make sure that your progesterone and your DHEA come back up? How do you make sure that your melatonin levels are natural? How do you make sure cortisol doesn't take over? How do you make sure that testosterone doesn't get out of whack? How do you make sure that everything goes shh? How do you make sure you can play gentle whack-a-mole with your hormones at night to reset everything for tomorrow? You get to sleep in a natural way. What helps you do that? You insert yourself back into the natural world. You stop separating from it. How do you do that? You go outside. Thank you. Bye. That's it. You go outside at different times of day. It's so unsexy, and it feels like it's not going to do anything because you can't register. It's not like you take NAC as a supplement, N-acetylcysteine, and then you take it for 2 weeks and now you're starting to see the benefits. We want results right now. We are built to have results right now. This kind of thing and reinserting yourself back into nature feels so natural that it actually dissolves away some of the discomfort and the other things that you don't even realize, you don't even recognize it, and your body goes, oh, thank you. Thanks, buddy. So it's not sexy. And it doesn't feel like you can, oh, good job your way out of this, because you don't get any good jobs. All you get is and you can't go back and measure that. You can't go back. You don't feel that unless you really genuinely get to that place where you set things up to hear that the body's working better. And that gentle sway towards that in the body is so slow moving that you cannot perceive it. You don't witness it. You don't notice it. And a year from when you implement these ideas, you go, oh, wait a second. Oh my God, look at me a year ago having a hard time sleeping. I forgot that I had a hard time sleeping. And you'll know you're doing it right because you will have forgotten. You will have forgotten that you had a hard time sleeping. You will have forgotten that your periods were really hard to manage. Fertility is a different thing. You always remember fertility. I don't know how you forget that you had fertility issues, because that is such an inherent desire to be, like, it's an animalistic thing to be in this world. And also, oh my God, it's the most amazing thing to be able to have babies. And the whole process of babies is the most magical thing. So you never forget that. But I think in all other instances, you certainly would start to see it recede in the background, and you wouldn't notice unless a year from now you go, hang on a second, what was it like a year ago? Oh my God, look at me over there having a hard time, and I'm not now. I'm totally going to keep doing it. So now what it takes at this time and place in the universe is a leap of faith and a trust, which, when you take an even bigger step out into how to be in the world today, of like the poop storms happening around the world and the shifts that we are being witness to and all of those things, and I'm not taking a stand on anything other than I'm taking a stand on being human. What is being asked of us right now? To be witnesses and to trust and to build. So how does that translate in my work? It seems like it's nothing. And when it seems like it's nothing, with such a slow potential, maybe, that to me is an indicator of that's what it takes right now. So if you struggle with any type of hormonal imbalance, what is the actual holistic nutrition thing to do? Get back in line with nature. What does that mean? Eat natural foods from the natural world. Eat the foods that are in season. Go with the seasonal eating thing. Eating a banana and I'm in Calgary. The way that the biochemistry of my body works based on the light cues I get from being outside tells me it's November 22nd today, November 22nd in Calgary. So that's where I am in time and place. So my microbiome is built according to those light cues to digest the foods that would have been available at this time of year in this land. It's not the time to eat a banana because I'm not in Costa Rica in banana season. I'm not saying don't eat those bananas. Yeah, be part of how we'll evolve through it, but also don't make that the total thing of how you eat. Make it be 80% as local as you can make it. If that's 40%, 50, 80, 100%, you do you, honey. You do what feels manageable and doable, and know that that's enough. and support the things you want to see and be consistent in implementing those changes. The other piece is to get outside. The morning light, the midday light, and the sun setting light are all three different informations that come to your brain through your eyes. If you're walking the neighborhood, put your glasses down and walk with your glasses down so that the light can make it into your eyes. Go for a walk before you settle into work if you're working from home. That's what I do now. Go sit on the back deck and have your morning cup of tea there. Go for lunch outside and have a cup of tea outside, bundled in blankets and jackets so that you're not cold and you're still getting the midday sun. Even 1 minute of light actually helps support the re-entraining yourself to the natural world, reinserting yourself into the natural world. But I'll tell you, the more you can do, the better. If you could do a 20-minute walk to work instead of parking in the parking lot right next to your building, now you're going to get an extra 20 minutes of information and walking outside, so you are reinserting yourself into the natural world. How can you reinsert yourself into the natural world? That's what I want you to comment on below. And you don't have to comment if you don't want to. Just make a commitment to yourself if you want to be a part of moving this world forward, you have to insert yourself into the natural world. It is the only way that we are going to be a part of solutions and a part of making this thing work. Because if you're in inflammation, if you have a chronic disease, you're not going to be shining your light in this world. And baby, we need you to shine your light. Oh my God, I'm tying in so many philosophical things to this, but I just wanted to point out the impact that you can have in reinserting yourself into the natural world of things. When you start to look after the earth, when you start to look after your part in it, you're not separate from it. Now you start to also, in a super selfish way, reduce your own aches and pains and symptoms and chronic disease progression. When you reinsert yourself into the natural rhythms of the world, you are working in tandem with the world, and now there will be less inflammation. And if we have less inflammation in our bodies, will the world now have less inflammation as well? Is the world on fire right now because we are on fire because we tried to shift too much too quickly by separating ourselves from nature? What happens if we re-entrain ourselves into those natural systems, into the way that Mother Nature works, into the way that the ecosystems are set up and we are a part of? What happens in how we can move through that world, and how do we help reduce it in the world, and how is that not how we build the new world? The new world is actually the old world, and it's a remembering of that old world and actively participating in it and actively letting go of those systems that are trying to separate us from nature. Just say no and go do the work. It's super unsexy and it's not going to make $1 for anybody. And that's actually how we do it. I'd love to hear what you think, because this felt like a very one-way conversation. Comment below. Okay. See you. Bye.